Alright, so Tending Bar with Finley one more time. Today's drink is going to be the Manhattan Classic Old School Cocktail. Like a lot of old drinks, its origin stories are kind of mostly just urban legends, but it dates back at least to the 1870s and possibly earlier. It was made originally in the city that it's named for, Manhattan. And we're going to drink one today. So, you're going to need some kind of whiskey. I'm using bourbon, which is not really traditional. Normally, you're supposed to use rye whiskey, but I like the sweeter taste of bourbon a little bit better. We're almost out of this bottle, and of course, it's not refrigerated. We're using sweet vermouth, available just about anywhere, and aromatic bitters, also readily available anywhere you care to buy them. You garnish with a maraschino cherry, and these were actually a gift to me by someone who told me to stop using cheap supermarket ice cream cherries and instead use the good stuff. They are imported apparently from Italy, but I wouldn't know anything about that. You're also going to need a mixing glass. I've filled mine with ice already, and a chilled cocktail glass, as well as your stirrer. And if I can find it, something to strain the cocktail with. Now, I make mine at a double recipe. Oh, and you'll also need a jigger, of course. I make mine at a double recipe, so I'm going to use 4 ounces of bourbon, which again, we are running out, but if I have to, I can switch to just Tennessee whiskey, which I keep some Jack on hand for just that purpose. It's 2. And it's kind of a contentious issue, but I don't believe in refrigerating any kind of dark liquor. I also don't do it with my tequila, so it's kept at room temperature. And look at that, we were that close. 3.5 ounces of bourbon. We're going to finish it off with some Jack Daniels. I know Jack Black Label isn't necessarily the best stuff, but it's close enough for government work, I think. Especially when you're mixing cocktails. If you're sipping it neat or on the rocks, you might want something a little nicer. We'll put that back. And for that, we're going to have 1.5 ounces of sweet vermouth. So, and if you ever get it in your head, I encourage you to try a sip of sweet vermouth. It's just a fortified wine, and it really is quite sweet. We're almost out of this stuff too. I wouldn't encourage just drinking it, but you could. And we're going to use aromatic bitters. Now for this, I'm using 6 dashes, which maybe is a lot, but we're making a full glass of this stuff. While that sits, we're going to get out my fancy new cherries. The cherry is a nice garnish in this. It's like an olive in a martini, and in fact the Manhattan basically is a whiskey martini. Once you finish your drink, you've got a cherry soaked in whiskey and sweet vermouth, and it tastes pretty good. Put that back over here. Now we stir. Stirring, again, a hot debate, stirring versus shaking, but if something is all alcohol, like this is, bitters are something like 50% alcohol. The bourbon I was using is 90 proof, and the vermouth is 15%, I think. If something is all alcohol, I encourage you to stir it. It doesn't mess with the texture too much, unlike shaking. We stir and we stir. We're getting it ice cold because none of these ingredients are refrigerated. And then we finished up, we pour it nice and neatly over the cherry. That is, if you've been keeping score at home, just a hair over 5.5 ounces. And there it is, Manhattan. Enjoy.